Hi, it's Dwyer. GamblersAdvisory.com, a free site. BettingAngle.us, a free site. It's June the 6th, 2025. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Now, in boxing, there's a lot of pretending. There are a lot of late revelations. I like to look at weigh-ins just to see how in shape the fighter is. Now, believe it or not, the title at 135 is no longer held by Keshan Davis because he missed weight by 4.3 pounds today at the weigh-in. Right, folks? This is ridiculous. 4.3 pounds. So the only person who has a shot at the title now is Edwin Delos Santos. Keyshawn, who is unbeaten, lost his title on the scales. So Delos Santos, and I give him credit, he's going forward with the fight. Right? Delos Santos is a puncher. This is really a freebie for him. He's going to go headhunting Keshan Davis, who might not be in the best of shape. Again, Keyshawn blows weight by 4.3 pounds. Right? So understand, the pacing of the fight might be different now. Right? Delos Santos has nothing to lose. If he loses the match, he will be viewed as having fought a guy who had an unfair weight advantage. So he's going to try to tee off on Keyshawn. And the question is, what fight is Keyshawn ready for? Is he ready to go 12 rounds, carrying 4 extra pounds? Right, folks, when you're talking about weights below 140, 4 pounds is a lot of weight. Let's also talk about the possibility of Keshan Davis, and in my eyes, he's on my very short list of the best pound for pound in boxing. This is an immensely talented guy. Right? But 140 is a different world, isn't it? Let's continue with our air of disbelief. Right? Because boxing, again, has a lot of, we'll say, fairy tales. So I'm going to name 3 guys who should be among the top at 140, are widely considered to be among the top at 140, but of course we all know that none of these guys is at 140 anymore. None of them. Teofimo Lopez. Folks, the next time you see him fight, and I understand he's taking some time off from the sport, fighters have personal lives too, right? Things are happening with Lopez that Lopez is addressing. But the next time you see Lopez, it won't be at 140. You know that. Lopez wants to fight people like Jaron Ennis. Lopez agreed to fight another one of these guys, but yet they picked the catch weight. And the fight didn't happen. That guy, of course, is former 140-pound champion Devin Haney. Right, folks? He's not at 140. In fact, for those following the sport carefully, you know that Devin Haney gains weight between fights. Right? Devin Haney has been seen in public looking like he's weighing in the 160s. Let's name a third guy who you're not going to see at 140 anytime soon. Ryan Garcia. Right, folks? He wasn't even 140 for his fight against Devin Haney. So let's talk about who's left at 140. Let's talk about the matchups. Let's talk about the talent level. Now, sometimes you see a guy, and the guy looks like he's the most talented. But wins and losses matter. I don't care how much talent a guy has. If he goes out and loses a match, hey, he's behind the next man. He's behind the guy who beat him. right? That's just the way it is. Now, I believe at 140, what I'm going to say is a little bit loaded. Gary Antoine Russell, an argument can be made, is the most talented guy in the division. Right? When he's on his front foot, most guys crack. Right? It's an open question, and it is open, on whether he's able to get by Richardson Hitchens' jab. But understand what happened. Gary Russell lost to Alberto Puello. Alberto Puello, in recent fights, believe it or not, I believe it's like his last 6 or 7 fights, has won 3 split decisions. Now, this guy beat Sander Martin. He beat Gary Antoine Russell. So now he's fighting. This is part of that big card taking place in Queens. He's fighting Subiel Matias. Folks, that is a huge fight. Huge. Now understand, I personally believe Subiel Matias is a one-handed fighter. Right? Just like for years I've believed that Caleb Plant is a one-handed fighter. The public doesn't quite describe him that way. We'll see how it turns out. Just understand, Puello is one of these guys who's very hard to find in the ring. He's very slick. He's not a knockout puncher. He's a guy who can be right in front of you, but yet you can't land any punches cleanly. He gave Gary Antoine Russell his only loss. Now understand, Subiel Matias, Puerto Rican, was fighting in Puerto Rico, had everything going his way. Against Australian Liam Parrow. These are the names that Keshan Davis has to consider. Right? And understand, Liam Parrow beat Subiel Matias. Right? There's a lot of blurring here at 140, folks. A lot. Right? Understand also in the mix is Jack Catterall. But Catterall lost to Arnold Barbosa, who just lost to Teofimo Lopez. And of course you have Isaac Pitbull Cruz in the weight class. Let me say this too. Richardson Hitchens ended up beating Liam Parrow. Hitchens has a big fight we all need to pay attention to against George Kambosos. The last time we saw George, he looked bad. He was getting beaten up. But that was against the Grand Master, Vasily Lomachenko, who has walked away from the sport. Understand, Kambosos is one of these high volatility guys who, on his best day, beat Teofimo Lopez. And of course, you have Sander Martin. You might remember he fought Lopez. He's the guy who got the knockout in the fight. Right? That decision was suspect. Right? So, folks, the river is raging at 140 pounds. This is not a weight class like middleweight, where I could look at the division and I could say, well, it's either Janabek or it's Adames. Right? This isn't that kind of division. This isn't the heavyweight division where I say, well, it's Usyk and it's everyone else. Right? You're not going to be the champion at heavyweight until you beat Usyk. Right? This is not cruiser, where you say, okay, well, there's J.O. Pataya, there's Gilberto Ramirez. Does anyone else matter? No. Here, you have 3 guys who shouldn't even be listed in the rankings, right? They're out the door. Haney, Lopez, Garcia. Then you got a bunch of guys who've had heartache, right? That Jack Catterall only loss in his career. right, hurt him, threw him back in the pack. The Gary Antoine Russell loss, only loss of his career, hurt him, threw him back in the pack. You got these slick guys who are slick by slick standards, right? Puello, Sander Martin, folks. Those are complicated opponents. I'm not sure how you prepare for them. And of course, you have Pitbull Cruz, who, an argument can be made, outside of Lamont Roach, arguably gave Gervonta Davis his toughest fight. So into this world comes Keshan Davis. Right, folks? Things aren't clear-cut here. Right? This is a rough division. More importantly, this is an unsettled division with many cagey vets. Right? Think about it. Catterall, Puello, Martin, Hitchens. Hitchens, by the way, for those who don't know, and I like to talk about fighters who know how to use length, have a great jab, right? The fight doesn't start until you're able to get by the guy's jab. Folks, that's this fighter, Richardson Hitchens, right? If he were to fight Keshan Davis, wow, how many rounds would it take Davis to get inside? And I'm talking about an unbeaten fighter who I privately have on my short list of the best in the sport pound for pound. Right? So pay close attention to the Davis saga. Over the next 24 hours, we're going to figure out, maybe a little bit more than 24 hours, you know how these fight cards drag. We're going to figure out whether Keyshawn's extra weight, and folks, it's considerable, right? This isn't the, you need to lose 4 ounces and the guy hits the sauna. No, this is when you show up and you're 4 pounds, more than 4 pounds overweight, right? Ryan Garcia would feel embarrassed by being overweight 4.3 rounds, right? Pounds. Garcia was only over a little bit more than 3 pounds. Here you have a guy who supposedly is defending his title, instead giving up his title on the scale. We're going to find out whether that's because he took training loosely, wasn't ready, right? Or whether the guy's body said to him, player, we've lost enough weight together over the years. I can't go there anymore. Right? Let me say this too on Delos Santos. He hasn't fought in a while. He's been out of the ring. If you want to see a horror movie where someone looks petrified and is running away from the boogeyman, take a look at Shakur Stevenson's performance against Edwin Delos Santos. This guy has one of the biggest punches in the division. Right? Understand, in the pre-fight, and granted, fighters say a lot of stuff in the pre-fight, right? They're trying to sell tickets. They're trying to look tough. You don't want to face the champ and look terrified, right? But Delos Santos looked calm. This is scary, right? They asked him, since the fight is going to be in Keyshawn's backyard, how he was going to try to convince the judges that he beat the hometown fighter. And his response was, hey, I'm not going to try to convince anybody. My words, not his. I'm going for a knockout. Well, folks, against a guy who blows weight by 4 pounds, things have gotten a lot more interesting. I take Delos Santos at his word. I think he understands. Look, he cannot rely on the venue. He cannot rely on the judges. Right? So I'm expecting him to come out and go for the stoppage. Right? We'll find out how much that upsets the apple cart, because if he gets the stoppage over Keyshawn, just understand what that means. When Keyshawn is 4 pounds overweight, it means Keyshawn can't fight him in a rematch at 135. If Delos Santos decided to take that rematch, right? Hell, he's fighting the guy, and the guy weighs more than 4 pounds more than him now, right? He could fight the rematch and not put his title at risk. He wouldn't have to gain weight to fight the rematch. Think it through. He'd still be a champion at 135. Let me say this too about 135. You got Manny Pacquiao at 147, and he's calling out Gervonta Davis. You got Jake Paul at who knows what, 200. And he's calling out Gervonta Davis. Right? Davis, of course, is fighting Lamont Roach, who might have other ideas. If Davis gets by Lamont Roach in the rematch, and I believe that fight's going to be a tough one. But if he gets by Lamont Roach, if he isn't taking a knee in rounds and not getting penalized, if it's a straight-up fight and he beats Lamont Roach, right, folks, if you're Davis, wouldn't you give up the title if offered a huge payday against Manny Pacquiao? Keep in mind, that fight carries low risk for Davis. Because Davis, unbeaten as I make this video, right? Just understand, Davis can make the argument, look, I fought Pacquiao at 147. We'll overlook the fact that Pacquiao's 46 years old. Right? Davis can say, look, man, I'm a little guy. Right? I gained weight to fight a legend. You would look at the Davis record if he lost to Pacquiao, and you'd say, okay, that one loss, we understand it. Right? Jake Paul, folks, anytime a guy who's weighing 135 is fighting a guy weighing 200, you have political cover. Right? Why did I lose the fight? Well, because weight classes matter. Even by Terrence Crawford standards. A Jake Paul, Gervonta Davis fight would carry heavy risk for Gervonta Davis. Right? But my point is simply this. Davis has so many big money offers in front of him right now. Right? You know, how long are you going to keep Manny Pacquiao waiting? The guy's already 46 years old. You get offered a boatload to fight Manny Pacquiao, and of course, Pacquiao, if he beats Mario Barrios, would be the champion. It'd be a championship fight at 147. How could you turn that down? You're not going to be on the phone saying, hey, Team Pacquiao, I hear you, but I'm not ready to fight him. Look, 46 is 46. When a guy comes out of retirement and then he calls you and says, hey, I want to fight, and you understand, in terms of box office, this is like winning the lottery. You have to take that fight. So understand, if Delos Santos, this is a huge opportunity for him. If he beats a 4.3 pounds heavy Keshan Davis and wins the title at 135, right, then whoever wins Shakur Stevenson against William Zepeda, that's a big fight coming up, right, would be an obvious opponent. Not only that, Delos Santos, of course, could fight other guys at 135. Right, you get the championship, you know, you have things called voluntaries, especially right after you fought the champ. Right, a Delos Santos could say, hey, let me fight other guys, or let me fight Keyshawn in a rematch, right, at a weight 140 that doesn't place my title in danger. Let me get that paycheck, then I can come back and fight whoever's lined up at 135. Right? Think it through. It's interesting. Just know, a champion has already lost his title, and the fight hasn't even happened yet. Those are my thoughts. Let me hear yours. in the comment section of this YouTube video. Thanks for stopping by.